Now, we all know that Bruce Wayne is Batman, but we also know that he is only human, and therefore either through old age or injury, he will eventually die, or at the very least retire. Now, this being media, he won't actually die for real until the character becomes unprofitable, which is pretty unlikely at this point. But in the DC universe, he has retired, died, gone missing, or in some other way been out of the picture, and a new Batman has been needed. And of course, the replacements are naturally going to be one of the Robins. And this video is going to go over every time that one of the Robins has become Batman. And by Robin, I of course mean Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake, and Damian Wayne. Now, let's start with one of my favourites, the evil Tim Drake Batman. Now, whenever superheroes go into the future, they find that their future selves have always turned evil. It's a classic comic book trope. And when the Titans go to the future, they meet their evil future selves, including Tim Drake, whom is of course now Batman. A ruthless leader of the Titans who spends his nights executing criminals with the same gun that was used to kill Bruce Wayne's parents. Now, it's never really been made clear exactly why he turned evil. Basically, a lot of his loved ones seemed to die, and it took a toll on him. And he began to use harsher techniques to fight crime, and eventually he, and the rest of the Titans, basically became dictators who do anything in the name of justice. Now, personally, I thought this was a bit of a stretch, and it didn't really work with their characters. But that being said, this is just a one-shot going into the future to see the evil counterparts, and it is quite a fun story, and like I say, this is my favourite evil Batman, so it does kind of work quite well. Of course, he isn't the only evil Batman on this list. In an alternate future, there is a version of Damian Wayne who sold his soul to the devil. The exact wording of the deal is unknown, but he seems to have gotten the power to watch over Gotham for all of time. He has healing powers and essentially just cannot die, though he is kind of a twisted version of Batman, dealing out harsh, warped versions of justice. And this is definitely Damian's most evil version of Batman to date. Now, most of the Batmen on this list are from alternate timelines and alternate universes, but in the main DC universe, Batman was actually replaced by a Robin. In the Final Crisis comic event, Batman died. Well, it's later revealed that he didn't die, he was just lost in time, and it's a long story that we're not going to get into, but the important part for this video is that everyone thought the Batman was dead and gone, which meant someone else had to take over the job and put on the cape and cowl. Now, this was all decided in the comic event Battle for the Cowl, where nearly every sidekick the Batman has ever had was considered for the role. Jason Todd even came back from the dead to get the job. Or at least everyone thought he did, but it turned out to be Clayface. Why, you ask? Because the writer wanted to put Jason Todd in the story, but DC wouldn't let him resurrect him. And Clayface is the go-to shapeshifter in Batman's rogues gallery, so he was shoehorned into the story. Though on the plus side, this did lead to a lot of fans wanting Jason Todd to come back to life, and DC listened to them and brought him back to life as the Red Hood. So it was definitely a good decision on the writer's part. And eventually in this story, Dick Grayson accepts the fact that he is the best choice. After all, Damian Wayne was a child, and just not tall enough to wear the costume. Now, Tim Drake was also quite young, but he possibly could have pulled off the costume with some good tailoring. But he didn't want the job anyway. And Dick Grayson really was just the right choice. He was old enough, he had the training, and the moral compass and strength of resolve needed to be Batman. And we all know it's going to be him at the end of the day because he's just the right choice. And he did the job very well for a couple of years, until the real Batman, Bruce Wayne, returned and took up the mantle of Batman once more. Now, Grayson also took over for Batman in the movie Batman Bad Blood, when Batman was once again thought to be dead. And Grayson needed to wear the cape so the criminals of Gotham didn't get too bold in Batman's absence. Of course, he didn't have to do so for that long, as they were able to find and rescue Bruce Wayne, and he became Batman once again. Which is a relief to Grayson, as he never wanted to be Batman, and he tells Damian just as much in the Batmobile. And it does seem likely that he never will be Batman in this universe, unless there is no other candidate. So likely Damian would end up taking over the mantle in the New 52 universe. Although considering how it ended with the whole Flash going back in time paradox, well, that's likely never going to happen. And in the show Batman the Brave and the Bold, there is an episode of a possible future where Bruce Wayne marries Catwoman and retires from fighting crime. And he passes the mantle of Batman on to Dick Grayson. And he takes it on for good, as Batman does actually stay retired until his untimely death at the hand of the Joker's son. Now this leads to Batman and Catwoman's son, Damian Wayne, becoming Robin to get vengeance on the Joker's son. It's pretty much a tradition for the Wayne family at this point to have dead parents and then go get vengeance on them. And of course they bring him to justice, and Grayson does continue on as Batman for many years, until he too retires and Damian Wayne takes over the mantle with a high-tech Batman suit. And Damian's son in turn then becomes his Robin, and likely will one day be the next Batman as well. And in the multi-part version of the film, Under the Red Hood, Batman dies in certain versions of the story, depending on which choices you have taken. And in these versions, someone has to of course take over as Batman. And in this universe, the only actual choice is Dick Grayson, as Tim Drake isn't one of the sidekicks yet, and of course Damian Wayne is still a baby, so he's a bit young to don the Batman suit. Though one day he may grow up and wear it, though seeing as how he's being raised by Jason Todd, well, that seems pretty unlikely. But hey, you never know what the future holds. So Dick Grayson takes over and he becomes Batman, and he does his best to rein in Jason Todd as a murderous psychopath. Now in Batman Beyond, Bruce Wayne has gotten too old to be Batman and has to retire, eventually passing the mantle on to the new protege, Terry McGinnis. But before this, he actually tries to give the mantle to Damian Wayne. Now Damian and Bruce are not close in this story, in fact they're pretty much estranged, but Damian returns to Gotham to help him out, and he dons the mantle of Batman. But Batman loses contact with Damian, and when he arrives on the scene, he finds only the Batsuit and no Damian Wayne, and then has no contact with him for many, many years. But eventually it is revealed that Damian left to join Ra's al Ghul, and upon Ra's death, Damian took over as the head of the League of Assassins. And this is the official reason why Damian Wayne isn't in the Batman Beyond series, and why Terry McGinnis takes over the mantle in the first place. And in the Future's End comic, an older Tim Drake actually takes over the role of Batman Beyond after Terry McGinnis sadly dies. Now, Damian does attempt to be Batman in the Harley Quinn series when Bruce Wayne is unable to be Batman due to his injury. However, Damian is a bit too young for the role and looks pretty silly in the costume. Now obviously this whole thing is just a bit of a joke, but in all seriousness, he could have at least tried to make the suit fit him a bit better before he went out in public. And although I can definitely believe his ego would have him think that he could take over the mantle even though he's a child, he obviously can't. Although in the movie and future series Bat Family, there is a Damian Wayne who becomes the Merry Little Batman and actually puts on a little custom Batman suit for himself. Now, he's not technically becoming Batman, he's just wearing the suit, so whether you want to count that or not is up to you, but he does technically wear it, so I thought it was worth including. And Damian Wayne also inherits the mantle of Batman in the Deceased comic book event. Now, in this story, Darkseid creates an anti-life equation virus. It's a techno-organic virus, and it can actually infect people through electronic devices, specifically by looking at screens of either phones, TVs or laptops. And considering how many people look at those, well, it spreads pretty quickly. In fact, hundreds of millions are infected almost instantly across the whole of the internet. And they pretty much destroy the whole planet. And that includes quite a lot of superheroes. Now, one of the superheroes to get infected isn't actually Batman, as he figures out what is happening and doesn't look at screens. He only looks at analog, not digital, therefore he can't get infected. Sadly, he wasn't in time to save the other members of the Bat family, and so both Dick Grayson and Tim Drake get infected, and they attack him and manage to infect him as well. Now, Batman puts himself in an old Mr. Freeze costume in order to slow down his metabolism so the virus can't take over as quickly, and this gives him time to give a bit of a farewell to Damian Wayne and the other heroes. And afterwards, once the virus has taken him, Alfred puts a shotgun bullet through his head and he flies off in the Batwing to give the suitcase to Damian Wayne the Batman wanted to give him. And inside it is of course his own Batman costume, one which Batman thought he was worthy of and wanted to one day give him himself. He also includes several little gadgets for taking out world threats, such as Superman and Wonder Woman. And he actually grows up to be a pretty good Batman in this universe. And in the video game Injustice 2, in Damian Wayne's ending of the game, he watches Batman die, and seeing the blood pour out of his outfit, he decides to change his ways. He realises that he is Batman's son, and although he hated him, he now wishes to honour him. And so he dons the cape and cowl and becomes this universe's new Dark Knight. And since Superman's regime is still in full effect, and the fact that Damian Wayne was very lethal in his regards towards criminals, and so I imagine that this version of Batman is a much more murderous one than we're used to seeing. Now, as you may have noticed, the only one of the 4 main Robins not to be a Batman is Jason Todd, which is why I haven't mentioned him. Now, like I said, he did wear the costume in Batman Battle for the Cowl, but again, as I said, it was actually later revealed to be Clayface. But Jason does wear the Batman costume in the Injustice 2 comic book, but he doesn't actually take over from Batman, he just wears the cape and cowl. Though he does manage to beat Bruce Wayne in a fistfight, and Batman even admits that he lost because the other Batman was just a better fighter than him. And Batman would not say something like that lightly, as he never admits that someone is better than him. But still, whether this one counts is up to you. As I said, he doesn't actually inherit the Batman mantle, he just wears the Batman costume. And that is every time that the Robins have become Batman. Although of course if you know of another time that I haven't mentioned, then please let us know in the comments to help make this list as accurate as possible. Along with which one of these Robins you think should take over as Batman full time when Bruce Wayne retires. I mean, I think we all know it's going to be Dick Grayson, but we might have a favourite that we wish would take over. Personally, a part of me wants Tim Drake to do it because I think he'd just be quite a good detective Batman with a lot of gadgets, and I think it could be quite interesting. Plus, I kind of feel like Damian wants to make his own legacy. Plus, I also kind of feel that Damian won't take over as Batman. He wants to prove himself to his father, prove that he is worthy of the mantle. But I think ultimately he'll want to go off on his own and become his own man. I mean, in truth, that's pretty much what all the Robins have done. But eventually someone will have to take over. So please let us know in the comments who you think it should be. And I'd just like to quickly remind everyone that we have some merchandise available on our store, and to say thanks to all of you who have donated to the Needle Mouse Productions page on Patreon. And as always, thanks for watching, and feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.